Yeah, we'll go ahead and get started since we're recording. So anybody who isn't able to make it, we'll get the recording. It's really
Okay.
good to see everybody.
Yes, and I would like to echo Biz and thanking you for all joining us today. Thank you for registering and coming to see what is going on with Forum for the Future. And hello, my name is April May, and I am the Coalition and Programs Director here with MELA. And I want to welcome you to our Forum for the Future update meeting. So much has happened over the last 5 months. And today, and 5 months ago, we had our Forum for the Future Summit that was in Jackson. And today we are thrilled to share important information on the status of the working groups and where we are going next. But before we begin, I would like for each of you to put in the chat, and each time I'm asked this question, I come up with something different. So put in the chat for us, tell us something that you want from Mississippi's children. So if you don't mind putting that in the chat box for me, something that you want from Mississippi's children.
And again, if you're not speaking, I'm sorry to harp on this. Please make sure to put yourself on mute.
And then Biz, if you don't mind, Biz or Alexis or Mindy or anyone in our backbone to call out some of the things that you send in the chat that people want from Mississippi's children.
Oh, yes. Some folks are saying quality education,
Okay.
positive futures. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Safety, less poverty, not to live in poverty,
Mm.
a great quality of life to be lovingly cared for. Oh,
Oh, I
that's
love it. These are
mhm.
wonderful. You have any more?
Healthy children, equitable quality education. These are really beautiful things.
Thank
And they're
you all
so
so much
aligned with
for
the work
sharing.
that we're trying to do.
Yes. And you can continue to put those in the chat. Thank you all so much for sharing. We hope that you see some of the things that you wrote down in the chat, that we are moving towards those goals of what you all want to see for our children in Mississippi. Biz, we can go to the next slide. All right, I want to talk to you all about our objectives for today. We're going to celebrate the coalition's progress, and our coalition is called Forum for the Future. We're going to review and understand the purpose of the Forum for the Future, its working groups, and its goals. We're going to introduce to you our brand new Forum for the Future website, and we're going to discuss the next steps for the forum. All right, next slide. But before we begin with that, I would like to take a moment to introduce some of the Forum for the Future backbone, the data team and the steering committee, and working group team members to you, since they've all have had a hand in getting us here. So you will see the backbone team consists of Elizabeth Harris, Biz Harris, April May, Mindy Phillips, and Alexis Hicks. Our data team is Heather Hannah, Callie Poole, and Brad. And I can't think of his last name right now. And it's really bad.
Long.
Yeah,
Bradley
thank you,
Long.
Bradley Long. I just had a whole moment. Our working group co-chairs for our ELGs, we have Kanisha Brooks Smith and Sharonda Claiborne Common. For our wages working group, we have Kathy Grace and Connie Clay. And for the true cost of care working groups, we have Tamara Smith and Jeff Leffler. So we all want to thank you so much for your hard work that you have done over the past few months. And we're going to move on to our next slide. All right, we're going to talk about what is the Forum for the Future. Many of you all are probably new to this work, and so I want to give you all a little background about the forum. So we're going to go to the next slide. The Forum for the Future is a movement to transform the child care system in Mississippi. More specifically, it's a collective impact initiative designed to help early childhood organizations, business leaders, and policymakers break down silos and leverage our combined efforts, resources, and expertise to build a state-of-the-art child care system that meets the needs of all children and families in Mississippi. And our main goal is to work smarter, not harder. And one key point that I want to pull out of the bullets that you see on the slide is that we want to speak with one voice on behalf of young children. And we do that by making sure that we elevate the perspectives of childcare providers and parents, because they are the center of our work. So that gives you all a brief update, a brief intro into the Forum for the Future, and it's going to exist to help us all. All right, next slide. Before we dive into our work, let's review the forum's principles. We want to always keep these at top of mind. And our principles are to trust the collective impact process. We want to make sure that we always balance power. When you think about what I just said about the Forum for the Future and what we do, we want to make sure that we're balancing that power of all those individuals that are at the table. We want to dismantle inequities. We want to overcome mistrust. We want to own the work. Each person that is a part of the forum, we want to make sure that the work that we give to this, that we own it also. So it's not us and they, it is we. And so our norms, we always want to make sure that we want everyone to feel involved in the conversation and in the process. So if you have questions, always ask. There's not a question that we don't have. If we don't have an answer to it, we can figure it out together. We try to avoid jargon and acronyms. If you are in the early care and education world, we have a lot of acronyms, NACE, MELA, MCCA. And so we want to make sure that when we are speaking of different organizations or practices that are in early care and education, that we just say them outright and explain to them as they come up. We want to recognize that everyone is an expert in their own right. So therefore, we value all input. And then we also agree to disagree. You can disagree, but please don't be disagreeable. So we just want to make sure that we're listening to all voices and just having an open mind when we have our conversations. All right, next slide. All right, so in May, we held a hybrid meeting to give everyone an overview of the what and why of Forum for the Future, which includes breaking down silos and maximizing and sharing resources. Again, we want to work smarter, not harder. So we talked about a 10-year goal, and the 10-year goal is by 2030, Mississippi's childcare system would be state-of-the-art, fueled by robust data, resources, and cross-sector collaboration to meet the needs of all children and families. And today, we will explain how we are one step closer to that goal. And you may be wondering, like, what does it mean when we say state of the art? And after a lot of conversations and synthesizing information from providers and families and stakeholders, we have come up with the definition for how we define state of the art. And it is a stable, competitive, respected field. It has increased access to affordable childcare. It has improved health, academic, and economic outcomes through quality education programs and sustained resources and investment that support the childcare system. So that is what we are going to discuss today. I've given you a brief introduction, and now I'm going to pass it over to Biz Harris as she talks about how we celebrate our progress. Biz?
Yes. Hey, folks. I am really excited to be with you. And just to share sort of some wins that I do want to be clear, the wins are not something that are Forum for the Future exclusive. They're something that I think our whole early education and childcare community can celebrate. But I think it's important that we highlight these things because many of you and many of us together played a role in these things. So I think and Forum for the Future would definitely be a part of a lot of these celebrations. So the first thing I think, since the summit in May, some really exciting things have happened. I know that the Mississippi Low Income Child Care Initiative had an incredible press conference to celebrate the day that the child support requirement was removed from the child care payment program. And that has really increased the number of applications to the program, which is thrilling. Also, since then, many of you have been attending the MDHS's town halls, and they drafted a quality support system. And, I think it's exciting to share that that is heavily aligned to the one that the Quality Support System Working Group that was designed by 25 Mississippi child care providers developed last year. And it's definitely MDHS's own program, but it definitely is reflective of that report. and making sure that the voices of childcare providers is included in policy and regulation change is something that we feel so strongly about. Also, as you'll see in just a minute, our wages working group completed a survey of over 600 childcare teachers. Thank you to all of those who helped spread the word, give feedback on the survey. So many of you here really played an integral role in making that happen. And so I'm excited for you to see those findings in a moment. And at a recent budget hearing, Mr. Bob Anderson said that they will be moving 30% of TANF dollars to childcare providers. This just was in the budget hearing that was reported on the Senate. I don't have any other information about this. This is just something that was announced at the budget hearing. So I'm really interested to know more about this. But these are some wins for childcare providers that I think can and childcare and children that will really benefit all of us. And I think it's exciting to see how we're all coming together and seeing this momentum. So if you want to, I'm gonna, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna if I can find, I was gonna put my clapping hands up in my picture. If you're excited about these things and want to put a clapping emoji or the celebratory emoji in the chat, or if you want to, give us a celebratory emoji in the corner of your photo, please do, because these are some exciting things that have happened for our children and for childcare. Another exciting thing that is less systemic, but I think it's exciting for our collaboration is this website that we are launching and that I think will really be beneficial to everybody in terms of our collaboration. The address I want y'all to know is www.msforumforthefuture.org. And if Mindy or Alexis, or April, if you could drop that in the chat for us. We're going to show this to you. We're having I'm personally having some technological issues today, so we won't go through the website. Plus, we have some really exciting working group updates. But I would love for you to navigate over to that. What you'll see up here, this member portal button. If you are a member of Forum for the Future already, if you came to our summit in May and you got one of those pins that said member, Forum for the Future member, you are a member. And or if you weren't able to come, but you filled out the survey that said you wanted to be a full member, you have access to this portal. You go and log in, and there will be a special back end, which you'll notice is going to have announcements from all of our partners. Anyone who is a member is eligible to put announcements in our Google Drive. We'll also have templates and forms, the Forum for the Future PowerPoint template, all those things. We'll have updates and information from the working groups. And this is something that we're very excited about what we're working on. We're really hoping to upload all early childhood, all childcare related events and programs and projects sort of up in this calendar, and so that we can all sort of see what's going on and do even less scheduling conflicts. Y'all notice that we had to move this event up an hour because we made a mistake and booked on top of something else that we really wanted people to go to. So we're hoping that this calendar helps us. And then we'll also have member contact information so you can get a hold of other folks. So again, but if you are not ready to be a full member, that is okay, but we actually ask that you don't try to log into the member portal if you're not ready to be a full member. And the website also includes what it means to be a full member. So if you click on the member portal and you're like, I don't remember what I signed up to do, or I'm not sure if I'm ready, you can click there and it'll take you right over to read about what we ask people to do. So it also includes updates about our work and the agenda. So if you ever want to know anything about Forum for the Future, this is going to be our hub. This is where we'll place reports and all sorts of things related to this work. So make sure, please visit there. And with that, we are going to dive into the things you have all been waiting for, the working group updates. Before I turn it over, I want to just say that we've had 3 working groups that we launched in May. You're actually going to hear from 2 today because we've decided to postpone the Early Learning Collaborative, the real deep dive work, until January, because these 2 were just really so intent. These 2 working groups, and specifically our wages working group, have really been doing so much work in the past few months. So we're going to hear from first we'll hear from Dr. Grace and Dr. Hannah, who will talk about, the wages working group and the things they have been doing. And if y'all just want to tell me, I'll click through everything as you need me to. So with that, here we go. Oh, really quickly, just as a refresher, if you need to know what the wages working group was about, we really want to look for funding structures that do not that don't force childcare providers to raise their rates, or parents to pay more. The idea is to find ways to pay teachers more that in new and innovative funding structures. But before we could get to that, we actually had to do some data digging and some data collection and then some analysis. So just these are the questions that the working group set out to understand. And now, Dr. Hannah and Dr. Grace, it's you.
Kathy, are you kicking us off, or do you want me to start?
Oh, I think you should start since you've been running the ship for the most part of the way, and I've just been the first mate. But you go right ahead and then just turn it to me when you're ready for me to.
Okay, gotcha. All right, thank you. So so we were able to do a really wonderful survey of childcare teachers in the state of Mississippi for the Forum of the Future, along as a part of the Forum for the Future Wages Working Group. Biz, you can go to the next slide. So we all know the rationale behind it. We know across the country that we're having a childcare crisis. We know that childcare classrooms in Mississippi are closed. And we also know that nationally, 98% of all other jobs pay higher wages than early childhood education, which leaves our early childhood educators at being 8 times as likely to experience poverty as K-12 teachers. So we wanted to better understand the landscape and childcare, I cannot talk, I'm sorry, the childcare workforce in Mississippi. Right now, we don't have a database of all of our providers, although that is in the works. But we really wanted to get a sense of the demographic makeup of childcare teachers, current wages, working conditions, workforce stability, and really what wages would be needed to stabilize the workforce and to encourage additional education. So we sent out a survey link and a QR code to all licensed childcare facility. And then we also posted on social media, and we asked directors, please share this information with your teachers. And we held some public Q&A sessions in case anybody had questions. The survey was not open that long. It was open from July 18th through August 9th, and yet we got 661 fully completed responses, which is phenomenal. Since we don't know the total number or composition of childcare workers, we can't say that we know the response rate and the level of bias in the sample, but we have observed that the data we collected align closely with that is publicly available from other sources. So we found out that on average, respondents, our teachers, were 39 years old. 60% identified as Black and 33 as white. And we did have almost 3% who were male. You can go, Biz. We were happy that we got responses from teachers in 65 of the 82 counties. The counties that are in gray are the ones that we did not get a response from. And some of those have very few child care centers. Others, we're not sure why we didn't get a response, but you can go ahead, Biz. So to our surprise, we found out that almost 90% of teachers who responded to the survey say they have one job. And also we had a huge majority, almost 70% say, or actually 70% say that they work 40 hours or more in that one job. So you can go to the next. We did have the majority of respondents were teachers or lead teachers. We had some who were also director designees, assistant teachers, or classroom aides. We have a variety of facilities. We did distribute this also to Head Start and ask them to circulate it, as well as folks who were not on the licensed list. So we wound up predominantly with our center-based providers, but some family home providers, some public school pre-Ks, some Head Starts, church-based. And we asked if their classrooms were usually full, and 83% said yes. So this is interesting. We had 8% of the teachers who responded say that they spoke another language, but among those 8%, only 16% are in a position to do that with their students or families. So that's a pretty small percentage, speaking another language with children and families. And almost half, so a really large percentage of our teachers work with children with mental, physical, or other disabilities or delays. And we asked how many children. The average was 3. So we asked about training and education. 38% of respondents had completed education beyond high school. 15% held a CDA, and 48% had a high school diploma or GED or less. And almost a quarter, I'm sorry, almost a quarter were enrolled currently in a certificate or degree earning program, 11% licensed to teach in public schools. So on average, all of our respondents earned $10.93 an hour. As you would expect, director designees were paid the most at $11.96 and classroom aides the least at $10.20. Okay. So we looked at it based on urban status or rural status. Urban counties earn slightly more, $11.39, than rural at $11.23. We also looked at counties in the Delta. $9.66 was the average there. So the rural and urban counties that you see there are not the ones that were in the Delta. Those are all mutually exclusive categories. So having a child development associate or another nationally recognized certification made it more likely that your wages were higher, $11.16 an hour, than if you had a high school diploma. Obviously, having a bachelor's degree or higher was the highest at $12.79, less than high school diploma, $8.69. And as we would expect, Head Start, public school, and collaborative facilities paid more at $11.39 an hour. And home family based, we were looking more like on average of $9.47 per hour. So if you combine some of these categories and look at teacher wages by region while controlling for and education while controlling for the number of years experience, you find that teachers working in the Delta with a high school diploma or less made on average the least at $9.02 an hour versus those in urban counties with a 4-year college degree or higher at $12.88 per hour. So we said, okay, if your benefits would be the same, how much of a raise would it require for you to consider leaving your job in childcare for a non-childcare related job? And we found that 57% of teachers said that they would leave the childcare field for an additional $5 per hour, so more than half. And 16% said no amount of increase would cause them to leave the field. So when it comes to a wage or salary increase versus a bonus, the majority, 67%, did prefer a wage or salary increase rather than a bonus. And when they were asked what type of increase would encourage them to get their next highest credential or degree, 45% said they would consider doing that if it meant $5 or more per hour. So we posed a fictitious scenario of a childcare worker named Rita, and we said, So Rita's going to receive a raise, and it's going to mean she gets $867 more per month. But because she got that raise, she's going to lose eligibility for assistance programs, and those assistance programs are worth $1,000. So she's going to come out a little bit worse each month, but she would get a raise. And more than half, 57% of respondents said Rita should accept the wage increase, even though she would come out a little bit behind. Next.
Heather, I was just going to say, guys, we forgot to say, if you have questions or comments, maybe please feel free to put them in the chat, so that we don't, you don't lose your thoughts. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat if you have any.
Yeah, and I'm going to put my email address too. So if anyone thinks of something after this and you want to contact me, go right ahead. So we did ask about whether our child care teachers in the state were depending on assistance. And we did have a number of folks, 26% said yes to Medicaid, 18% SNAP, and 13% free and reduced lunch. And we also asked what types of benefits are offered to you at the child care facility where you currently work. Paid sick leave was the highest at, health insurance was the highest at 28%, then paid sick leave at 26%, and professional development at 25%. Bear in mind, when you think about health insurance and so forth, there are Head Start and public school teachers included in the sample. So we wanted to ask which types of benefits are preferred by child care teachers. And it was very clear that health insurance, paid time off, paid sick leave, and retirement were the most important. And we wanted to get a sense of how stable the workforce is. Over a third said that they have been actively looking for a new job within the past 3 months of taking the survey. And among that 36%, most of them, 77%, were looking for a non-childcare related job.
That was the last slide I had, Heather. I think there might have been the next steps, but I think Kathy, do you want to just kind of talk us through the next steps? I don't have a slide for that, apparently.
Hello, everybody. So glad to see so many folks on this Zoom. And I really want to say a thank you to Connie Clay, who helped with ringing the bell and working for all of the different people that we could to find who could reply for that survey. So we would have as many geographical counties represented as you saw on the map. One thing too to note is this was done in the summer or in the late summer, and Head Start was not necessarily in session across the state, and so that could probably affect some of the Head Start participants. We were really targeting the licensed child care facilities not necessarily related to Head Start, due to the fact that we have had more conversations with the directors and the teachers of those particular centers, so we wanted to hear from them in an organized way. As you can see, and there's a lot of information there to swallow, I wanted to then talk a little bit about next steps. Y'all know that we've had many studies, we've had many discussions, we've had many conferences, seminars about what's wrong, what should we do, and yet we have never come up with a real action plan to address all of the things that we have known. Now, with the work that this group has done, we have some hard facts, if you would, about the conditions and the situations that are facing all of you and your teachers. So what we hope you will give us in the chat box or in discussion here, brief discussion, because I know there's another group that's going to present, is what you would give us in the way of ideas that we could consider, or that you all would want to consider as next steps. We've shared this with a couple of other groups, and some of you may have been in the group that heard it before, but we are getting some suggestions that there be a task force that would be convened around this whole issue that would possibly relate to the business side of this, meaning that we'd have economic development people, representatives from the business community, from the people that are in state offices that control the recruitment of industry into the state. Many of us who watch that are concerned that they're going to get all these people that they need for industry, but they won't have the people to come to work because they don't have the childcare. Same way with some of the training programs in the state. They don't have the childcare, so the people aren't participating in the training. So to have a different focus, a different look at the data that we now have from a business lens, also to include some providers in the discussion, but to come up with some meaningful action that would allow us to move forward with either partnerships as a possibility, with assuming that we have some business buy-in that we have not had in the past. And so that is one of the things that has been brought forward. If Biz is going to, I'm sure, talk a minute or two about the plans that she's got in place for December and some of the activities that'll be going on across the state. But we would like to hear from you, because we are pretty well getting down to sharing this maybe 2 more times. And then when we are able to provide this information to the CCAC group and to the people at the business events, we will have a firmed next step that we want to promote and say that this is something that is, again, as you said earlier, Biz, a one voice recommendation, or it could be more than one. But from a standpoint of where Mississippi is in nationally, I would say in the work we're doing, we're making a fast run at catching up, but we still have some things that we need to put in place. And so there's other activities going on that are being sponsored by the state. So I'd like to hear from you all, or I'll turn it back to Biz, and Biz, you can manage the conversation or however you'd like to handle it now, unless Heather has something else she'd like to add.
I'm good. Thank you.
Well, y'all, please, if you have thoughts about next steps, I think, we really want to make sure again that we are using this data to come up with a really strong plan for change. I think we have probably some, and so what is most likely, and I think what sort of Kathy is saying, is finding a way to convene an additional group of folks to really develop a plan of what to do with this data, now that we have it. Okay, so please, y'all, if you wouldn't mind, it's really hard to give a round of applause on Zoom, but if you wouldn't mind, I do think that this working group has really done something very exciting. Debbie, thank you for your comment in the chat. I agree. I think that this report gives us some really tangible data to help us, make positive change. So I really want to make sure that they get a round of applause. And then the plan is to take this data and develop something collaboratively that we can really encourage policy or regulation, or just find dollars in all the different possible places that they could be. Okay, so with that, we're going to move on to our second working group, which has been chaired by Jeff Leffler, and also with support from Tamara Smith, and Dr. Hannah has also been playing a big role in this one. She is our data team, which is sponsored by the Debbie K. Kellogg Foundation, has really been an asset to us in a huge way. So we want to talk briefly just sort of about what was this group. It's really hard, we thought, to determine, an investment, a state investment per child, to really say, this is what childcare really, really costs. If you were giving great, amazing, engaging childcare to a child, this is what it costs per child to do that. We don't really know. Obviously, there is a market rate survey. There are a lot of different ways that people measure it. But I don't think that anybody has really come to a shared number that says like, yeah, that's what it works in Mississippi. And so at our meeting in May, Callie Poole presented some really valuable data to us that sort of shared the different ways people measure it and gauge it and ask for feedback from that working group. And from there, the working group has been sort of thinking about next steps. But the idea is really like how to come to that number or some a range of numbers, a range of like, this is what it really costs per child. So I would love to turn over to Dr. Leffler and Dr. Hannah to just kind of talk briefly about where we are and what's going on with that working group.
Thank you, Biz. We have not done as much as Dr. Grace's group at this point because we made a decision to define what we were doing and then to work alongside some work that Dr. Hannah's doing with the market rate survey to add some collective impact quality to that work and to inform what's happening with that, potentially through some focus groups and that kind of thing. And with that said, we do have a meeting of our working group scheduled for November 16th at 9 a.m. And if you're interested in being part of the working group and to help us, I would encourage you to reach out to MELA and let them know, because certainly if you want to have a voice and give some help to that working group, we would love to see you take a part. We clearly know that wages represents the biggest part of child care's budget. I've been a director of multiple programs in my career, and I can attest to that. It's constantly the big budget ticket item. And so we have relied on this wages group to inform us about that component of the overall model. But we all know that even at current pricing, the price of childcare represents a very big ticket item for a family, often rivaling the expense of college tuition. And yet, even at that high expense, it doesn't produce enough funding for us to provide that kind of high quality, reliable, safe. I know in one of the programs that I was the director of, we would do decent throughout the year, and then all of a sudden all of the teachers would get out of school in the summer and they'd take their kids out, and so we were left with who gets paid at that point. So a big portion of this is looking at, in our context in Mississippi, what is that realistic dollar amount that we can look to and that we can use to influence policy, partnerships, that kind of thing, to really produce that state-of-the-art system that's so part of our overall goal. So again, we're on the front end of that work, and I'll let Dr. Hannah kind of share some specifics about what we're doing with the market rate and the group that we're working with going forward.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, so Biz, you said that the market rate survey does not measure, it's not intended to measure childcare cost. It does measure current childcare prices and rates, but we know that it often costs, as Jeff was just saying, it often costs centers more to provide that care than what they're able to charge because of the market conditions. So the Department of Human Services is required every 3 years to conduct the market rate survey. That's coming up. And in addition to doing the market rate survey this year, we're going to try to do a deep dive also on cost. And we're going to do that 2 ways. One is going to be add questions to the market rate survey about costs, and then also to have some input sessions with providers to have discussions around what do things really cost. And so this working group is absolutely key and essential to that process, because we're hoping to get lots of fantastic information from the working group, as well as, depending on the working group, to help recruit for input sessions and really just provide feedback the whole way through, because research is research, but that's not being in a child care center. You don't know unless you talk to the folks with the lived experience to really make it real and to make it meaningful and useful. So I'm really excited about this. And a lot of the data we collect will also look at the wages from the director's point of view. So we'll have a second data source for some of those data, and we'll really be able to get some great numbers for Mississippi. So I hope all the providers who are on this call will understand the intent behind that and work closely with us as we move forward. That's all. That's all.
Thanks, y'all. Am I echoing?
We have a question in the chat if we wanted to. Okay. Would it make a difference if Mississippi had a universal pre-K and or kindergarten? And Ms. Cooley, is that a question for the true cost of care or for the wages working group?
Wages. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Heather,
Like
Kathy?
would the wages be significantly different if it was required that all kids went to a pre-K or kindergarten in the public school system? That's really the question. That's what I was thinking.
I can speak to that in part. The kindergarten program in Mississippi is a required grade, if you would, that all schools have to offer. But there's not compulsory attendance connected to that. If you do not choose to enroll your child in kindergarten, then that is legal. If you enroll your child in kindergarten and then you decide, I don't want him to go anymore, then you are subject to possible truancy issues because you have enrolled him. So now he is considered a student. So the program is in place in Mississippi, but there was a very strong legislative, I guess you could say, I wouldn't even say request. It was stronger than request. The reason that it is not required like a kindergarten, like a first grade or second grade is because parents wanted to have the option to keep their child at home, put their child in another setting. And for that kindergarten bill to be passed, that was the compromise that was reached. We have somewhere between, I think in the low 90s, maybe mid 90s of the percentage of children who are attending kindergarten without that requirement placed on them. But the school must provide it, must, and they get an allotment from the state to pay the teachers and so forth. The pre-K programs are funded by the state in two ways. They're funded with the collaboratives, which may involve the providers. They must involve the Head Start and public schools, but the providers, licensed providers, may participate depending on the community and depending on how the grant application was written to MDE. The other funding source is a just standalone pre-K program that a school district can apply for. The other funds you can use for pre-K happen to be Title I funds. There's no tuition that is charged of the parent in any of those programs. The issue is with regard to how does that affect the child care industry is that you would look at whether or not your enrollment decreases as you would not have the numbers of students that you currently do, or whether or not you would beef up with your after school program, increasing the numbers there, or you would increase the infant toddler side, which we all know is more expensive, but there's an extremely important crisis going on right now with the lack of information, the lack of availability of infant and toddler care across the state. So to answer your question, I'm so sorry, allergies. It may affect where you live in terms of if you're in a rural or an urban area, but a lot of states have struggled with the balance and what it involves with the child care population perhaps changing.
Right. I
Thank you,
think that,
Kathy.
yeah, I think also just another thing to note is like without a significant investment in infant and toddler care, from the federal government or the states. I think it would really be universal pre-K at only, at schools, public schools would be probably potentially financially very dangerous, I think, for childcare providers. So I think there would have to be some investment in some very significant investment in infant toddler care as well. Since it's such a much larger expense, it's a more expensive care to provide. And parents wouldn't likely, even though they'd be saving money in 4-year-olds, 3 or 4-year-olds, they wouldn't necessarily have that money right away. An infant and toddler, it's like a longer thing. So I think that's a really great question, Ms. Cooley. Thanks for asking it. I definitely, if that's something that y'all are thinking about, I would love to talk more about it.
If I could add one thing, Biz, too, with the pre-K and the kindergarten programs, they're over with at 2:30 in the afternoons. Working parents need that 5:30, usually extended day, if you would, or summertime, which public schools do not do. So that's again where child care programs have to think differently or increase some of those services if they're in communities where there is an active pre-K or kindergarten population.
Thanks, Kathy. Well, y'all, this working group also is going to be really great. And I'm so glad that Heather mentioned, the need, and Jeff also mentioned the need for childcare for folks to join us on the 16th at 9. It'll be a Zoom meeting. And so we'll find ways for y'all to get that information. Reach out to us, to me, Biz at MS Early Learning, or April at msearlylearning.org to get on that list if you want to join it. And also keep a lookout for sort of, when you think about the market rate surveys, think about how people are, these folks are thinking differently about that to make it an even better data source. Okay. We are moving on to what's next with Forum for the Future. Please remember the website. If we could put a link back in the chat, just so folks who just joined us, because we're up to 77 folks joining us today. So we have a new website, guys, msforumforthefuture.org. If you want to visit there, if you're a member of Forum for the Future, or you want to be a full member of Forum for the Future, you'll have access to the back end, which will be we're still working. We're still building up the robustness. So don't go there thinking you're going to see all the stuff right now. But we wanted to have it so that we can all start using it and making it what we all need it to be for our shared work. But with that, I'm going to, I want to share y'all have not heard from our new Director of Advocacy and Policy, Alexis Hicks. And so I want her to share a little bit about what's coming up next for Forum for the Future and for all of our shared work.
All right, so we have a couple of really exciting updates as it relates to Forum for the Future, starting at the end of November, or is it December? I'm not sure, but we'll be hosting some events with legislators, some business breakfast meetings to prime them, get them pumped up for our requests. And so as those dates become available, we'll be sure to share that information out with you so that you can stay connected and stay in the know about that. We'll also be planning for Capitol Day pretty soon. So as it relates to preparation for Capitol Day, we'll be doing some advocacy trainings for childcare providers in the coming months. So be on the lookout for some information. You'll also be prompted to take a survey at the end of this. And so in that survey, it's going to ask you to share out times that you might be available. So be sure to include your availability, where you're located, and any other information that might be helpful for us in planning those advocacy trainings. Again, those advocacy trainings are directly in relation to Capitol Day, and Capitol Day will probably be sometimes between January and March of 2024. And so one thing that you can do is please invite your legislators to your centers and share with them how you help parents get to work by keeping their children. And so that's all that I have. And so, Biz, I will toss it back to you.
Thanks. And you know what? I realized that I made a mistake on this slide. So please, y'all, excuse me. When I said keeping their children, you are educating their children. You are caring for their children. That was one of those like very late on a Friday typos. Please excuse me. I know that the work you are doing every day is educating, protecting, and developing and building, the baby's brains. So excuse that mistake there. But this is something that I want to share a little about. We're hosting some events with legislators. We are actually in the process of hosting 5 breakfasts for legislators around the state. We are not asking them at this point to encourage any policies, but what we are doing is trying to help them make the connection that the point that Debbie made in the chat, that childcare is a workforce development issue. We know it's about educating babies. We know it's about making sure women can get to work. But for some reason, those messages are not connecting with leaders in the same way we would like it to. So we're really trying to push the childcare is a workforce development issue, and childcare helps parents get to work and helps business leaders. So the messengers are being recruited by Tanya Ware of Ready Nation. They will be business leaders from around the state. They're being hosted at either workforce development locations or actual industries in Mississippi. And so it's going to be, we're really going to talk about, the 0 to 3 area as a workforce development. So that's something that we'll be sharing more about. And if you find yourself in one of the regions where we're hosting it, we would love for some of you to attend. Although we know sometimes, early morning times when it's drop off can be difficult. But we really are trying to prime the pump and help as soon as our legislators get elected, really lay the foundation for this conversation that we're having. If you'd like to help support those or play a role in those, please also, you're free to email me or Alexis about that. And again, if you are inviting your legislators that have just gotten elected to your center, make sure you're telling them how without you, the huge industries or the businesses in your community could not go to work or would not have the employees they need. I think if it would help, we're happy to put out some talking points that might help you we can all spread this message to our folks that are making decisions. But I also want to thank again our steering committee. Pastor Eric Lee is here. Tanya Ware is here. Jeff Leffler is here. I know that we have several other steering committees members, and I'm not sure who all from the steering committee is on this call today, but they helped us develop the Forum for the Future goal, as well as those 4 pieces of what it means to be state of the art. So without them, we wouldn't be going in the shared direction. I also want to thank a huge funder of this work that makes our backbone work possible, the Tallahatchie River Foundation. Mr. Morgan Freeman and his daughter Morgana envisioned all of Mississippi early childhood working together, and that's how we got here. So we're so thankful for their support, and we're really excited that all of you are here with us today to learn about where we're going. We really are going to have some big policy and legislative next steps coming, but the hope right now is that we're just gathering this data and really putting together a solution that that works for as many people as possible. So with that, please tell us how we did. I hope sometimes you get internet hiccups, but if you are able to, you should be able to go straight to the survey by putting this by using this QR code with your phone, or if one of my team could put the link in the chat so people can click there, that would be wonderful. And please make sure you tell us how we did, because this is how we know how to make these meetings better. We really do take your feedback and your recommendations very seriously.